Let's cover the basics of how digital files can be edited and produced for print techniques that use layers of color like screen printing, risograph, and others. This won't cover in full the range of techniques and technical details of preparing files, or as it also may be called, making color separations. The basics of printmaking is a full course all unto itself, but if you are interested in making physical prints from digital drawings, you'll have some techniques to get you started. Again, this video is specifically covering printmaking techniques which layer color, so not printing techniques like inkjet or G-clay, as it might be called, which print full color images at one time. Printmaking processes like screen printing or risograph operate by printing positive layers of color called color separations. This means printing from a fully black or bitmapped image and then adding them one layer at a time. So how do you turn a digital image into color separations? Well, there are two ways. One is to design the image for printing in these positive color separations before you finish the drawing. So if I know I want to take an image to a physical print, I can purposefully draw the colors separately from each other. For this image, I've drawn all layers that will be printed separately. So the first layer printed will be the bottom color or go underneath all other layers. And for this image of a tiger, that is going to be an orange or a red color. So I'll actually use a technique we used previously, which is clipping masks. Since ultimately each layer has to be black or bitmapped, only black or white pixels in order to translate to screen printing or risograph, I've drawn all my layers in black. I've pre-drawn these layers for the sake of time, and now to see this layer in color or approximate the colors that I want to print in, I can apply a color fill layer on top and then right click to turn this into a clipping mask. Now I can double click on the color fill layer and change this color over and over again. And if I repeat the process with the other layers, I will have a fully colored digital illustration that I can export and use on the web. And I can also use this file to print because I've already created color separations. The second way is to take a fully drawn and colored illustration like this one and use channels to separate it into those positives or only black pixels to use as color separations. This second technique is tailored to printing in the 4-color method to try and reproduce full color. So it's important for this technique specifically to make sure your color mode is actually CMYK and not RGB. Remember that CMYK is the language of printed material, as layering cyan, C, magenta, M, yellow, Y, and black, K, create a full range of colors. So if the file is in RGB, remember to change it by going to the menu bar to Image, Mode, CMYK. Now I'm going to open my Channels menu by going to Window and selecting Channels. Now in the Channels menu, you can click through each color channel and you can see Photoshop filtering each of them. So cyan shows all of the cyan information of the image and so on. To separate them, this process has actually been streamlined by Adobe, and what used to be much more manual work has become one simple button. So in Channels, I'm going to click the 3 horizontal bars at the top right of this panel to open up more options. And I'll scroll down to Split Channels, And instantly, Photoshop has made my single flattened file into 4 separate files of purely black or gray information based on that color channel information. It also names them, which is greatly appreciated. Now, these files are actually grayscale, and printmaking only works with purely black or white pixels or positives. I would need to go into the color mode again and translate them into bitmaps in order to use them for screen printing. If I am, say, printing with a risograph, which is a printing machine, which is itself partly digital, I could send these purely grayscale files to print, and then the risograph would make that bitmap translation for me and turn everything into either black or white pixels. But if you need to do that conversion of each layer into halftone bitmaps yourself, let's quickly run through that. This process of creating halftones for screen printing or printing in general can be its own full course, so we'll demonstrate just one way. I'll use this guide, which is included on Canvas for you. So I'm going to convert each layer into a specific halftone pattern at a certain angle. So in cyan, I'll go to Image, Mode, and then Bitmap. It will give me 2 pop-up menus. The first is this bitmap menu. I'll keep the output the same, so 300 dpi applies to all printmaking, including screen printing. And I'll make sure to select halftone screen under method. Then I'll hit OK. And now the menu for the halftone screen settings appears. Here I'll put 40 for the frequency. This determines how many dots are created and how fine of detail will be retained. So 40 is a decent middle point. You can experiment to see how a lower or a higher frequency affects the image. You want to make this frequency consistent across all the layers. In angle, here I will consult the guide for the angle of each halftone. And for this file, cyan or blue, I'll input 15 degrees. For each color layer, the angle will be different to avoid too much overlap. And under shape, generally I recommend ellipse or round as the best shapes to use. Again, make sure that your shape and frequency are consistent over all 4 files, but your angle will be different. So I'll hit OK again, and now you can see the image has been converted into either black or white dots. And depending on my frequency, that level of detail will either be higher or lower. Now, before I save this file to use as a color separation, I need to convert the color mode one last time back to grayscale. So bitmap as a color mode only works on a computer. It needs to be converted one last time to grayscale before it's ready to be used as a color separation. I'll go again to Image, Mode, and then Grayscale. This small menu will pop up asking you about the size ratio. You want this always to be 1 for a 1:1 size ratio or no size change. So hit OK again, and now you have a layer ready to be used in screen printing as a color separation. So I'll continue the process for all the other 3 layers, turning them into halftone screen bitmaps and changing the angle of the dots. Again, unfortunately, we don't have access to our normal printing facilities, but this will give you the knowledge that you need to start printing when access returns.